Hi, and welcome to Finding Your Way Through Therapy. The goal of this podcast is to demystify therapy, what can happen in therapy, and the wide array of conversations you can have in and about therapy. Through personal experiences, guests will talk about therapy, their experiences with it, and how psychology and therapy are present in many places in their lives. With lots of authenticity and a touch of humor, here is your host, Steve Bisson.
Thank you, and welcome to episode 105. If you haven't listened to episode 104 yet, it was about change, and I hope you enjoyed it because I truly think that there's a lot to be said about how change happens in therapy. So if you haven't listened to it, just go back to it. But episode 105 is going to be a review of the whole season, which there's a lot that happened this season. So let me try to go through it as best I can, and if I forget some things, you let me know. But I always think that when we have such a long season in a good way, sometimes we missed a few episodes, especially the 100 episode week. So please listen and go listen to some of this stuff. We started this season with Michelle LaReau-Alves, who's a colleague of mine. We talked about sex therapy. We talked about how uncomfortable people are with sex. And it was a great episode. So I hope you go back and listen to that. Episode 96 was an update after my flight. I think that was something I wanted to do because people have really responded to the episode I talked about where I had the tear on the flight. The aftermath was in episode 96. So please go and listen to that. And episode 97, probably one of the most inspiring episodes I've had in all my seasons, frankly. Pavel Yityal, and he was very interesting. We talked about his experience with his wife, her paralysis, his broken neck in a car accident after they just got married. And so this is just a good tease for you guys to think about it and go back and listen. Gordon Brewer's episode 98, this was also the announcement of me being part of the Psych Craft Network. It was a great episode. We talked about therapy. We talked about group practices. We talked about spirituality. We talked about podcasting. And just Gordon's just an interesting guy. So I hope you go. The Practice of Therapy is this podcast. You can shout out to that too. Go and listen to that. But it was a really good episode if you want to go back and listen to that. In episode 99, a great colleague of mine, Sarah Cloud, who gave me a lot of opportunities in this field, and I always will be thankful for that. We talked about a bunch of different things, but I think that seeing treatment of substance use as the same way as we treat medical situations such as cancer is what we talked about mainly, among other things. But if you want a review of all the jobs I did before, we do bring those up. So it was really, really cool to talk to Sarah and kind of have that review so you can go back and listen to that. And then was episode one, or the week of the episode 100 that I did, and so many great guests. So the Monday one was with Courtney Romanowski and Bill Dwinells. We talked about a lot of different things. They had never met before, so they were talking about how they heard about each other through the podcast and how that was fun. The following one was just a solo episode talking about how excited I was about my 100th episode. And then the actual 100 episode was with Susan Rogendorf and Stephanie Simpson. It was just a great combo of people who have never met, but had just great chemistry. And we really talked together about different subjects, including coaching and crisis work and how it's all related, and how when we open our minds to other situations and other people, we tend to do a whole lot better. The episode after that was with my girlfriend, Anna Meyer. I hope you go listen to that. It was interesting because I really was apprehensive at first, not because of her or anything else, but there's a certain lack of control, right? And I think I mentioned that in that episode, but you go listen to it, you'll have an understanding of it, but it went really well. And you can get a little insight as to what it is to date a therapist. And then the final episode, the episode of week of 100 episode was with Morgan Beard and Pat Rice, talking about another great combo of two people who have never met, who really just gelled together really well. And Money talked about different things in regards to her spirituality, her music, and other processes that she's going through right now. And Pat Rice, who has over 37 years of sobriety, also talked about his spiritual journey. And we even talked about the fifth dimension. So go and listen to that. Episode 101 was my letdown episode. And if you want to know what I mean by that, go and listen to it. And then you'll make perfect sense to you. Episode 102 was with Eric Knox and Brian Harkins, two firefighters. We talked about the firefighting, the different challenges they have possibly from as a first responder with the police, and also the advantages and disadvantages that they have, including cancer from the gear they actually wear. So go and listen to that. Lane Kennedy and Tamar Medford were on episode 103. I love being on their podcast. I'm happy they came to my podcast. And this is another collaboration that I hope lasts for a long time. We're working on doing a few lives together. So I hope we can do that sooner rather than later. And finally, the last episode was on change. I just talked about at the beginning of this podcast. But please go and listen to that, because when people talk about how to find their way through therapy, I think talking about change is going to be key. So that was the season. It was one hell of a season. So happy. But the season was so long in the sense that I'm not used to doing that many episodes. So might have a shorter season 9 if you ask me. So keep that in mind for next season. Episode 106 is going to be the most downloaded episode. I know the answer. I know who it was. It was one of the ones I just mentioned. And if you have paid attention a little bit, I will give you that the practice of therapy might have won the most downloaded episode. And if you haven't figured that one out, I guess you'll have to tune in.
Please like, subscribe, and follow this podcast on your favorite platform. A glowing review is always helpful. And as a reminder, this podcast is for informational, educational, and entertainment purposes only. If you're struggling with a mental health or substance abuse issue, please reach out to a professional counselor for consultation. If you are in a mental health crisis, call 988 for assistance. This number is available in the United States.